Ladies and gentlemen, economic prosperity is not just about money. It's about freedom. It's about choices. It's about the ability to wake up every day and design your life on your terms instead of living on someone else's terms. Now, here's the truth. Prosperity doesn't come from waiting or hoping or wishing. Prosperity comes from creating, from stepping up, from being the kind of person who sees opportunity where others only see obstacles. The world doesn't owe you prosperity, but it will reward you if you bring value. When you solve problems, when you make people's lives better, when you become a person of character, discipline, and vision, money, success, lips, abundance, they all follow naturally. Think about it. Every breakthrough in history, every invention, every business, every fortune came from someone who refused to settle for average. They thought bigger. They worked smarter. They kept going when everyone else quit. That's the mindset of prosperity. And here's the beautiful part. Prosperity is not limited. It's not a pie that runs out when somebody else gets a bigger slice. Prosperity expands. The more value you create, the more people you help, the more the world gives back to you, and the more you inspire others to do the same. But let's be real, prosperity requires responsibility. It requires discipline. It requires the courage to risk failure. It requires the humility to learn. It requires the persistence to keep showing up day after day, long after the excitement fades. So if you want economic prosperity, for all, it starts with you. You being the example, you being the leader, you raising your standards. Because when you win, when you grow, when you become the kind of person who refuses to live small, you lift others with you. That's how prosperity spreads, one person at a time, one community at a time, until we're no longer talking about someday, we're living it. Right now. So the choice is simple: stay average, or rise, play small, or expand, survive, or prosper. Economic prosperity for all begins with the decision you make today. Prosperity is freedom. That's the foundation. That's the starting point. And when I say freedom, I don't just mean having a fat bank account. I don't just mean stacking cash so you can buy fancy cars, expensive clothes, or live in a big house. Sure, those things are nice and they can absolutely be part of prosperity, but real prosperity runs much deeper than that. Real prosperity is waking up every single day and knowing you have choices. Choices in how you spend your time, choices in where you go, choices in who you spend your life with. Freedom to live on your terms, not chained down by circumstances, fear, or the opinions of others. Think about it. Most people live their lives stuck. They wake up every morning, drag themselves out of bed, and go to a job they hate. They trade their time for a paycheck that barely covers the bills. And deep down, they know they're not free. They feel trapped. They feel like life is happening to them instead of them being the driver of their own life. Prosperity changes that. Prosperity opens the doors. It creates breathing room. It gives you space to think bigger and live bigger. Without freedom, prosperity is just numbers on a screen. But with freedom, prosperity becomes life itself. Now, here's the kicker. Prosperity doesn't start with money. It starts with mindset. Freedom is an inside game before it ever becomes an outside reality. You can take two people, put them in the same exact financial situation, and one will feel rich, alive, and in control while the other feels poor, stressed, and stuck. Why? Because prosperity is perspective. If you believe you're trapped, you'll live trapped. If you believe you're free, you'll start moving in ways that actually create freedom. The way you see the world shapes the way you play the game. That's why prosperity always begins in the mind. And let's get something straight. Money is simply a tool. It's not good or bad. It's not moral or immoral. It just amplifies who you already are. If you're generous, more money allows you to give more. If you're selfish, more money allows you to take more. If you're creative, money expands your creativity. If you're fearful, money amplifies that fear. So, when I say prosperity is freedom, what I'm really saying is money alone doesn't make you free. What makes you free is becoming the kind of person who knows how to use money as a tool instead of being controlled by it. But here's the tragedy. So many people think freedom comes after money. They say, once I make enough, then I'll be free. Once I save enough, then I'll live my dream. Once I get this promotion, then I'll finally breathe. That's a trap. That's a lie the world sells to keep you playing small. Freedom doesn't wait until someday. Freedom starts now. It starts the moment you decide to raise your standards, take responsibility, and stop handing your power over to excuses. Prosperity doesn't show up because you sit around wishing for it. It shows up because you live like you deserve it before you even have it in your hands. And the truth is, prosperity is about ownership, ownership of your time, ownership of your energy, ownership of your destiny. If you can't say no to things that drain you, you're not free. If you can't walk away from people who bring you down, you're not free. If you can't choose what you do with your own day, you're not free. Prosperity gives you that ownership. It gives you the ability to say yes when you want and no when you need to. And that right there is priceless. I want you to imagine for a moment what life would look like if you had total freedom. Imagine waking up tomorrow, no alarm clock blaring, no boss demanding, no bills pressing down like a weight on your shoulders. Imagine choosing exactly how to spend your time. Imagine working because you want to, not because you have traveling. Imagine traveling, exploring, creating, giving, without constantly worrying about survival. That's what prosperity really offers. It's not about never working again. It's about working on what matters to you, not what you're forced into. That's the gift of freedom. But don't get it twisted. Freedom is not about running away from responsibility. Freedom is not laziness. Freedom is not sitting around doing nothing. In fact, true freedom comes with even greater responsibility. Because when you're free, there's no one else to blame. There's no safety net. There's no pointing fingers. Freedom forces you to own every choice, every action, every result. And for some people, that's scary. That's why so many cling to comfort zones, even when they hate them. Because stepping into prosperity means stepping into responsibility. You can't have one without the other. And the most powerful truth of all is this: prosperity isn't limited. Freedom isn't reserved for the lucky few. It's available to anyone willing to claim it. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't matter how broke, stuck, or lost you feel right now. Prosperity is a decision. Freedom is a decision. And once you make that decision, once you draw that line in the sand and say, I will no longer settle for a life that keeps me small, everything begins to shift. The opportunities appear. The right people show up. The energy changes. Because life rewards the person who chooses freedom over fear, prosperity over scarcity, and responsibility over excuses. Prosperity does not come to the ones who wait. It doesn't show up to those who sit back, hope, and wish for things to change. Life doesn't hand out prosperity like a gift wrapped in shiny paper. No. Prosperity comes to the ones who create, to the ones who step into the arena, to the ones who put themselves on the line. If you're waiting, you're losing. If you're creating, you're moving. And that movement, that forward action, is what opens the door to abundance. Look around at the world's most successful people. None of them sat around waiting for permission. None of them spent their lives hoping the stars would magically align. They started creating. Even when conditions weren't perfect. Even when they didn't have enough money. Even when they didn't know what they were doing. They figured it out along the way. Because prosperity doesn't require perfection. It requires progress. It rewards those who take imperfect action and keep moving forward. But here's the reality. Most people don't create because they're scared. They're waiting for the right time. They say, once I feel ready, then I'll start. Once I have more knowledge, then I'll take action. Once I save up, once I get approval, once I feel confident, that's all nonsense. That's procrastination dressed up as logic. The right time never comes. The stars never perfectly align. If you're waiting for the perfect moment, you'll be waiting for the rest of your life. Prosperity doesn't wait, and neither should you. Creation is about starting where you are, with what you have, and making the most of it. It's about taking the raw materials of your current life, your skills, your time, your energy, your connections, and turning them into something more. You don't need to know everything. You don't need the perfect plan. What you need is the willingness to begin, to take the first step. Because once you start creating, momentum kicks in, and momentum is everything. Think of it this way: life is like a river. If you sit still, the current will push you backward. Waiting keeps you stuck. But the moment you start paddling, even if you're clumsy at first, you begin moving forward. Each stroke, each action, each attempt, it builds skill. It builds its direction. That's what creation does. It puts you in motion. And the moment you're in motion, opportunities that were invisible suddenly appear. Why? Because prosperity responds to energy. It responds to action. It responds to movement. Here's another truth: waiting is easy. Creating is hard. That's why so many people choose waiting. Waiting is safe. It doesn't demand risk. It doesn't demand courage. It doesn't demand failure. But creating, that's different. Creating forces you to step into the unknown. It forces you to face rejection. It forces you to fail, to adapt, to learn, and to try again. That's uncomfortable. That's why most people avoid it. But let me tell you something: all prosperity lives on the other side of discomfort. If you're not willing to face that pain, you'll never reach the freedom you desire. Creation is also about ownership. When you create, you take responsibility for your future. You stop blaming your circumstances. You stop pointing fingers at the economy, at politics, at your parents, or at your past. You step into your power and say, I will build. I will grow. I will make something happen. That's what separates creators from complainers. Complainers wait, creators act, and the world always rewards the creators, always. Now, let's be clear. Creation doesn't mean you have to reinvent the wheel. It doesn't mean you need to be a genius or come up with some world-changing invention. Creation can be simple. It's starting a small side hustle. It's improving a skill. It's building better relationships. It's solving problems for people around you. It's creating opportunities where none existed before. And the more you create, the more confidence you gain. Confidence doesn't come first. It comes after action. It's a byproduct of creating. And here's the final truth about creation: it compounds. One small act of creation leads to another. One door opens, and then another. One opportunity leads to two, then five, then 10. Creation builds momentum, and momentum builds prosperity. That's why the decision to create, even in the smallest way, is so powerful. Because the moment you start, you break the cycle of waiting. You step off the sidelines and into the game. And the game is where prosperity lives. Prosperity is not magic. It's not luck. It's not even about working the hardest hours or grinding yourself into the ground. Prosperity is about value. Period. The more value you create in the world, the more the world will reward you. If you want more abundance, if you want more freedom, if you want more opportunities, you have to ask yourself one question: how can I solve problems? Because that's all money is. It's an exchange of value. You solve a problem, you meet a need, you make someone's life better, and in return, prosperity flows back to you. Think about it. Every single product, every single service you use today exists because someone identified a problem and solved it. You're sitting on a chair, somebody created it because people don't want to stand all day. You've got a phone in your hand, someone solved the problem of slow communication. You drive a car, someone solved the problem of distance and time. Everything in your life is a solution somebody brought into existence. And because they created value, they got rewarded. That's how the game works. Prosperity follows value, always. Here's the beautiful part: you don't have to be a genius to create value. You just have to pay attention. Listen, observe. Notice where people are frustrated, where they're struggling, where something could be made easier, faster, cheaper, or better. That's opportunity. Most people walk past opportunities every single day because they're too focused on their own problems. But the secret is this: if you want your problems solved, start solving other people's problems. Because the moment you make someone else's life better, you create a bridge for prosperity to flow into yours. And here's the mistake most people make. They chase money instead of value. They ask, how do I get rich? How do I make more? Wrong question. The right question is, how do I serve more? How do I help more? How do I deliver more value? Money is the result. Value is the cause. If you chase the result without the cause, you'll end up frustrated, empty, and broke. But if you obsess over creating value, money will chase you. Success will find you. Opportunities will hunt you down. Why? Because people always pay for value. Now, let's get real. Creating value isn't always easy. It requires effort. It requires creativity. It requires resilience. Sometimes you try to solve a problem and fail. Sometimes you'll launch an idea and it won't work. That's normal. That's part of the process. Every failure is just feedback. It's showing you how to adjust, how to improve, how to deliver more value next time. The people who ultimately prosper are not the ones who get it right the first time. They're the ones who refuse to stop creating value no matter how many times they stumble. Value creation is also about going beyond average. Anybody can do the minimum. Anybody can do just enough to get by. But prosperity comes when you exceed expectations, when you go the extra mile, when you give more than you promised, when you care enough to over-deliver. That's what separates the extraordinary from the ordinary. People remember those who made them feel seen, heard, understood, and cared for. That's value. And when you build a reputation for delivering massive value, prosperity doesn't just show up, it multiplies. But here's what's even more powerful: creating value isn't just about money, it's about fulfillment. Because the truth is, the human heart longs to make a difference. You can pile up wealth, you can buy all the toys, you can check off all the boxes. But if you're not adding value, if you're not making lives better, you'll feel empty inside. Prosperity without purpose feels hollow. The richest life is not the one with the most possessions, it's the one where you know you mattered. That's why true prosperity is always tied to value creation. And don't forget, value is not always something physical. It can be emotional, it can be encouragement, it can be leadership, it can be wisdom. Sometimes the greatest value you can bring is simply believing in someone when they don't believe in themselves. Sometimes it's showing up consistently, being reliable, being trustworthy. Sometimes it's listening when nobody else will. That's value too. Don't underestimate the small ways you can make a massive difference. Because prosperity doesn't only flow from big inventions or billion-dollar companies. It also flows from character, service, and integrity. So here's the bottom line. If you want to prosper, stop asking, what can I get? And start asking, what can I give? Stop waiting for the world to hand you opportunities and start creating opportunities by being valuable. When you live with a mindset of service, when you focus on solving problems, when you dedicate yourself to improving lives, success stops being a chase and starts being a natural byproduct. Because prosperity is not a mystery. Prosperity is simply the echo of the value you create. Prosperity is not found in playing small. It's not found in settling for average, for ordinary, for good enough. Prosperity is born from vision, from the ability to see what doesn't exist yet, from the courage to believe in something greater when everyone else says it can't be done. Every major breakthrough in history came from people who refused to think small. They dared to think bigger, and because they did, they changed the world. Look back at history. The airplane didn't exist until the Wright brothers refused to accept that humans were destined to stay on the ground. Electricity didn't light up our cities until Thomas Edison refused to settle for darkness. The internet didn't connect the globe until innovators believed we could share information instantly across oceans, across cultures, across borders. Every one of these breakthroughs was once called impossible. Everyone was ridiculed. But the people who thought bigger didn't listen to the crowd. They believed in their vision more than they feared rejection. That's the difference between the average thinker and the extraordinary thinker. The average thinker asks, what's realistic? What's safe? What's common? The big thinker asks, what's possible? What's beyond what we see today? What if we tried? What if we pushed further? And that question, that curiosity, that willingness to think beyond the ordinary is where prosperity lies. Because if you're only thinking as big as the crowd, you'll only ever get what the crowd gets. And the crowd is broke, stressed, and stuck. You don't want that. You want more. That means you must think bigger. But here's the truth, thinking bigger is scary. It means stepping into the unknown. It means setting goals so big they make you nervous. They make your stomach turn. They make you question whether you're even capable. That fear is the sign you're on the right track. If your vision doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. Prosperity isn't found in the comfort zone. It's found in the stretch zone, in the place where you risk failing, where you risk looking foolish, where you risk everything, because you believe in something more. And let me tell you something powerful. Thinking bigger doesn't just change your future, it changes the way people see you. When you carry a vision bigger than yourself, people feel it. They're drawn to it. They want to be part of it. Leaders inspire by thinking bigger. Movements are born because one person refused to accept limits. Prosperity expands when big thinkers pull others into their vision and say, come with me. Let's build something greater together. That's how revolutions happen. That's how industries shift. That's how history is written. Now, thinking bigger doesn't mean ignoring reality. It doesn't mean you sit in a room, dream, and do nothing. Thinking bigger means you take bold action guided by bold vision. It means you're willing to try things others won't. It means you see opportunity in obstacles. When everyone else sees a dead end, you see a door waiting to be opened. So big thinkers aren't delusional. They're determined. They use their vision as fuel to push through setbacks, to keep experimenting, to keep innovating until the impossible becomes possible. But here's where most people go wrong. They think small because they've been conditioned to. Society teaches people to stay safe, stay in line, stay realistic. Parents, teachers, bosses, even friends, they'll say, don't dream too big. Don't set yourself up for disappointment. Just be happy with what you've got. That's average thinking. And average thinking leads to average living. If you want prosperity, lips, you can't let someone else's small vision define your potential. You've got to break free from that conditioning and give yourself permission to dream beyond the box. And understand this prosperity doesn't require you to be the smartest, the fastest, or the most talented. It requires you to be bold enough to think bigger and persistent enough to act on it. Plenty of people have talent. Plenty of people have intelligence. But without the courage to dream beyond average, talent and intelligence get wasted. The real winners are the ones who set audacious goals and refuse to back down until they make progress. That's what thinking bigger is all about. It's about refusing to quit until the vision becomes reality. So ask yourself right now, where have you been thinking too small? Where have you been limiting yourself? Where have you been saying, that's not possible for me? Because the truth is, the only limits that exist are the ones you accept. The world doesn't decide how big you can dream. You do. The moment you stop thinking small and start thinking bigger, your entire life shifts. New ideas show up. New people enter your life. New doors open. Because prosperity doesn't just follow effort. It follows vision. And the bigger your vision, the bigger your prosperity can be. One of the greatest lies people believe is that prosperity is limited. They think wealth is a pie. They think if someone else gets a bigger slice, there's less left for them. That belief keeps people small, it makes them jealous, it makes them competitive in the worst way. But the truth is this: prosperity is not a fixed pie, it's unlimited. The more value we create, the more prosperity expands for everyone. Look at the world today. 100 years ago, most people didn't have electricity, running water, cars, or even access to basic healthcare. Life was hard. Opportunities were few. But innovators created new technologies, new businesses, new solutions. They didn't take prosperity from someone else, they expanded it. Because of them, billions of people now live better lives. That's the proof. Prosperity grows when people create value. It's not about dividing the pie. It's about baking more pies. Here's what small thinkers do. They see someone successful and assume that success came at their expense. They think, he's winning, I must be losing. If she's wealthy, it means there's less for me. That's a scarcity mindset. It's toxic. And it keeps people stuck. Prosperity doesn't work that way. In fact, the more people succeed, the more opportunities open up for others. A booming business hires employees. A successful entrepreneur creates jobs. A new invention sparks entire industries. Success multiplies. That's the nature of abundance. And let's get real, envy kills prosperity. When you resent someone else's success, you shut the door on your own. Because instead of asking, how can I create more value like they did, you waste your energy tearing them down, criticizing, or complaining. Prosperity doesn't flow to complainers. It flows to creators. The right mindset is to celebrate other people's success because every win proves what's possible. If they can do it, you can too. Their achievement doesn't diminish yours, it expands what's available to all of us. Prosperity also grows through collaboration. Think about it. One person can achieve a lot, but when people come together, they multiply results. A team of innovators can solve problems one individual could never solve alone. Communities that support each other create more opportunities than those that compete destructively. When we share ideas, when we trade skills, when we build together, prosperity doesn't get divided, it grows. Collaboration is one of the fastest ways to expand abundance for everyone involved. Now, here's the key: you must reject scarcity thinking. Scarcity says there's not enough to go around. If I don't take mine now, I'll never get it. That mindset drives fear, greed, and desperation. But abundance says there's always more where that came from. I can create, I can expand, I can grow. Scarcity locks you into survival mode. Abundance frees you to play the long game, to invest in yourself, to take risks, to innovate. And those who live in abundance are the ones who prosper most. Consider this: when Steve Jobs and Apple created the iPhone, they didn't take prosperity away from anyone. They expanded it, they launched industries, app development, accessories, mobile services that didn't exist before. Millions of people made billions of dollars because one company thought bigger and created more value. That's how prosperity works. Every new breakthrough doesn't shrink opportunities, it multiplies them. The more value you create, the more abundance grows for everyone connected to it. But here's the challenge: most people have been conditioned to think in limits. They've been told money is scarce, resources are scarce, opportunities are scarce. That's why they cling to what they have, hoard instead of create, compete instead of collaborate. Yet history keeps proving the opposite. Human creativity is limitless. Every generation has created more abundance than the one before. And if you're willing to step into that truth, if you're willing to become a creator instead of a consumer, you can tap into that unlimited stream of prosperity. So, the question is this: are you living in scarcity or abundance? Are you seeing the world as a place of limits or as a place of expansion? Because prosperity doesn't run out. Prosperity grows with every new idea, every act of service, every problem solved. The more value you create, the more abundance you unlock, not just for yourself, but for everyone your life touches. Prosperity is not limited, prosperity is unlimited. And when you embrace that, you stop competing for scraps and start building a feast that feeds the world. Prosperity doesn't just land in your lap, it doesn't fall from the sky. It doesn't show up because you wished for it or because you read a motivational quote. Prosperity demands responsibility. It demands discipline. It demands that you step up and own your life instead of waiting for someone else to do it for you. If you want freedom, if you want abundance, if you want prosperity, you have to be the one to create it. And that means being responsible. That means being disciplined. Responsibility is about ownership. It's about saying, no matter what happens in my life, I'm accountable. Not my parents, not my boss, not the government, not luck, me. Most people spend their whole lives pointing fingers. They blame circumstances, they blame other people, they blame the past. But blame never leads to prosperity. Blame keeps you powerless. Responsibility, on the other hand, puts the power back in your hands. The moment you say, I am responsible, you become the captain of your ship. You might not control the wind, but you control the sails. Now, responsibility without discipline is useless. You can admit it's on you, but if you don't have the discipline to act consistently, you'll stay stuck. Discipline is the bridge between intention and results. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. Anybody can take action when it's exciting, when motivation is high, when things feel easy. But prosperity requires discipline in the boring moments, discipline in the frustrating moments, discipline in the moments when nobody's watching and it would be easier to quit. That's where the real winners are made. And let's be real, discipline isn't glamorous. Nobody cheers for you when you wake up early to work on your goals. Nobody applauds you for saying no to distractions. Nobody celebrates when you're grinding quietly in the dark while others are out partying. But those moments of quiet discipline are what lead to loud success. Prosperity rewards those who are willing to pay the price in private long before the world sees them in public. Discipline is the down payment for prosperity. Prosperity also demands courage, because responsibility and discipline will put you face to face with fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of looking foolish, fear of wasting your time, fear of being different. And if you're not courageous, you'll shrink back. You'll retreat into comfort. But courage isn't about not feeling fear, it's about acting in spite of it. It's about saying, I feel the fear, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's what responsibility looks like. That's what discipline looks like. And that's the only way prosperity is built. And then comes humility. Because as you push forward, as you create, as you fail and learn, humility keeps you grounded. Prosperity doesn't come to the arrogant. It comes to the teachable. If you think you know it all, you stop growing. If you think you're above learning, you miss the lessons that prosperity requires. Humility means you're willing to listen. You're willing to adapt. You're willing to admit when you're wrong. That's how you evolve. And evolution is essential for prosperity because the world is always changing. Humility keeps you flexible, and flexibility keeps you in the game. Persistence ties it all together. Responsibility, discipline, courage. Humility, they mean nothing. If you give up too soon, prosperity is not built overnight. It takes years of consistent effort. It takes failing forward. It takes enduring setbacks, disappointments, and delays. Most people quit too early. They expect quick results, and when it doesn't happen, they give up. But prosperity belongs to the persistent. The ones who keep showing up day after day, long after the initial excitement fades. Persistence is proof that you're serious. It's the difference between wishful thinking and committed action. So here's the truth. Responsibility, discipline, courage, humility, and persistence are not optional. They're not nice to haves. They're the foundation, they're the price of entry for prosperity. Without them, you can dream all day long, but nothing will happen. With them, you become unstoppable. You become the kind of person who not only creates prosperity, but sustains it. Because prosperity without character never lasts. But prosperity built on responsibility and discipline is prosperity that endures. Prosperity doesn't spread because somebody makes a speech, writes a policy, or gives out promises. Prosperity spreads because people lead by example. Change doesn't start with the government. It doesn't start with corporations. It doesn't even start with your community. It starts with you. If you want to see prosperity for all, you've got to first embody prosperity yourself. You've got to raise your own standards. You've got to become the example that others can see, follow, and be inspired by. Think about it. Nobody respects words without action. Nobody is motivated by people who say one thing but live another. If you want people to believe in prosperity, you have to show them prosperity in your own life. That means discipline. That means growth. That means living at a higher level than the average person. You don't inspire people by telling them what to do. You inspire them by living the way they secretly wish they could. Your life becomes the proof that prosperity is possible. Leading by example means refusing to settle. It means saying, I will not live small. I will not accept average. I will not lower my standards to fit in with the crowd. Because the truth is, most people are waiting for permission. They're waiting for someone else to go first. They want to see proof before they act. And when they see you, when they see someone who raised their standards, who built themselves up, who refused to quit, that's when they start believing. That's when they say, if he can do it, maybe I can too. And make no mistake, leading by example is not easy. It requires courage because you'll be judged, you'll be criticized, people will talk behind your back, they'll call you arrogant, they'll call you unrealistic, they'll call you obsessed. That's the price of leadership. You've got to be willing to stand tall in the face of criticism. It's knowing that every great leader has been misunderstood at first, because people don't like being reminded of their own smallness. But eventually, those same critics will respect you because they can't argue with results. Raising your standards doesn't just benefit you. It benefits everyone around you. When you level up, you create a ripple effect. Your family sees it. Your friends see it. your coworkers see it, suddenly they start thinking differently. They start pushing themselves harder. They start raising their standards too. That's how prosperity spreads. Not through lectures, not through handouts, through example, through one person showing what's possible and lighting the path for others to follow. And here's the truth: leading by example isn't about perfection. You don't have to be flawless. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to pretend you never fail. What people need to see is authenticity. They need to see that you're human, that you make mistakes, but that you keep going. They need to see your resilience. They need to see your consistency. They need to see that even when life knocks you down, you refuse to stay down. That's what makes people believe. That's what inspires them. Leadership also means responsibility. Because when you raise your standards, people start watching you. They look to you for guidance. They model themselves after you. That's a heavy weight, but it's also an honor. It means you get to influence lives just by the way you live yours. Every choice you make, every habit you keep, every standard you hold yourself to, it all matters. Because somebody is learning from you, whether you realize it or not. The question is, what are you teaching them? And let's be honest, leading by example requires sacrifice. You can't lead if you're always doing what's easy. You can't inspire if you're always choosing comfort over growth. Sometimes you got to give up short-term pleasures for long-term vision. Sometimes you've got to walk away from people who drag you down. Sometimes you got to say no when everyone else is saying yes. That's the cost of leadership. But the reward is influence. And influence is how prosperity multiplies. So if you want to see economic growth, if you want to see prosperity for all, stop waiting for someone else to lead the way. Start with yourself. Raise your standards. Live with discipline. Act with integrity. Create results. Become the example. Because when you lead by example, you give others permission to rise. And when enough individuals rise, communities rise. Nations rise. The world rises. Prosperity always starts with one person saying, "I'll go first." Prosperity isn't just about you. It's bigger than you. It's about the impact you create in the world by the way you live, the standards you hold, and the success you build. When you rise, the people around you feel it. Your success doesn't just stay with you. It ripples outward. It affects your family, your friends, your community, and even people you'll never meet. The ripple effect of one life lived at its highest potential is immeasurable. That's why chasing prosperity isn't selfish. It's one of the most generous things you can do. Think about a stone dropped in water. The moment it hits, waves ripple out in every direction, far beyond the point of impact. That's what your life is like when you commit to raising your standards and building prosperity. Your choices don't just affect you. The discipline you practice, the growth you pursue, the example you set, it all sends ripples into the lives of people around you. Maybe it's your child who watches you work relentlessly and learns what responsibility looks like. Maybe it's a friend who sees you refuse to quit and decides not to give up on their own dream. That's the ripple effect. Your success gives people permission to believe in themselves. Most people are living small lives trapped by fear, self-doubt, and excuses. They want to believe more is possible, lips, but they need proof. And when they see you, someone they know, someone just like them, actually doing it, it breaks their excuses. It makes them think, if he can do it, maybe I can too. Your success becomes their evidence. Your victory becomes their inspiration. That's how you lift others, by showing them what's possible. But the ripple effect doesn't stop at inspiration. It also creates opportunities. When you become prosperous, you're able to hire people, invest in businesses, contribute to causes, and give back to your community. Prosperity allows you to open doors for others that they couldn't open for themselves. Maybe you provide a job. Maybe you offer mentorship. Maybe you donate to something bigger than you. The point is, your success expands prosperity outward in tangible ways. You're not just inspiring people, you're directly changing their lives. And here's something most people don't understand. Poverty spreads just like prosperity does. Negativity ripples outward. Laziness ripples outward. Low standards ripple outward. If you quit, if you stay stuck, if you live below your potential, you're not just hurting yourself, you're affecting everyone connected to you. Your children, your friends, your coworkers, they're all influenced by the way you live. The ripple effect works both ways. That's why raising your standards isn't just a personal choice, it's a responsibility. Because whether you rise or fall, you're pulling others with you. The ripple effect is powerful because it multiplies over time. You may not even realize the full extent of your influence. Maybe someone you inspired goes on to build something incredible. Maybe someone you encourage starts a business, creates jobs, and lifts an entire community. And maybe that community inspires another. The ripple keeps spreading, generation after generation, long after you're gone. That's the legacy of prosperity. That's the real wealth impact that outlives you. And the truth is, people need leaders more than they need critics. Anybody can sit back and complain. Anybody can point out what's wrong, but it takes real strength to lead, to succeed, to set an example others can follow. When you commit to prosperity, you're not just saying yes to yourself, you're saying yes to everyone who's watching you. You're saying yes to creating ripples that bring hope, courage, and opportunity into the lives of others. That's real leadership. That's real generosity. The ripple effect also proves that prosperity isn't a zero-sum game. Your success doesn't take away from anyone else. In fact, the more successful you become, the more value you create, the more doors you open, and the more opportunities you provide. Prosperity isn't pie, it's fire, and when you light your fire, you give others permission to light theirs. One candle lighting another doesn't lose its flame, it multiplies the light. That's what the ripple effect of prosperity looks like. So when you think about your own success, stop seeing it as selfish. Stop seeing it as just about you. Understand that your success is the spark that sets off a chain reaction. Your success inspires, uplifts, and creates opportunities for others. It ripples outward into families, communities, and nations. And the bigger you play, the bigger those ripples become. That's the power of prosperity. It never stays contained. It spreads, it multiplies, and it transforms everything it touches. Prosperity is not complete until it's shared. You can have all the money in the world, all the success, all the freedom, but if the people around you are suffering, if your community is struggling, if the world you live in is falling apart, then what you have isn't prosperity, it's isolation. True prosperity isn't just about the individual. It's about creating conditions where everyone can grow, where everyone can rise, and where everyone can benefit. Because prosperity that only serves you dies with you. Shared prosperity lives on. When prosperity is shared, it multiplies. Think about it. When one person rises, they open doors for others. When a business owner prospers, they create jobs. A teacher prospers, they educate and uplift future generations. When a family prospers, they build stronger communities. Prosperity is like a tree. It doesn't just feed the one who planted it. Its shade, its fruit, its oxygen, they all benefit countless others. That's why true prosperity must be shared. Because only when prosperity spreads does it create lasting impact. Now, don't confuse shared prosperity with handouts. It's not about taking from the successful and giving it to the unmotivated. It's not about punishing winners and rewarding laziness. That's not prosperity. That's dependency. Shared prosperity is about lifting others by creating opportunities, by inspiring growth, by setting higher standards, and by building systems where more people can thrive. It's about giving people the tools, the mindset, and the chance to succeed. You don't drag people to prosperity. You equip them to rise into it. And here's the beauty of it. When prosperity is shared, it creates stability. A world where only a few prosper is a world filled with resentment, division, and conflict. But a world where prosperity is accessible, where people feel hope, where they see paths to their own success, that's a world that thrives. Shared prosperity reduces crime, increases cooperation, and builds stronger relationships. It's not just morally right, it's practically smart. Because when everyone grows, society becomes healthier, safer, and more prosperous as a whole. Shared prosperity also fuels innovation. When more people have access to resources, education, and opportunity, more ideas are born. Think about the genius in some child right now who just needs a chance, access to education, a mentor, or a supportive environment to unlock their potential. Shared prosperity ensures that talent isn't wasted. It ensures that creativity isn't silenced. It ensures that the next breakthrough, the next invention, the next solution to global problems can emerge. Prosperity thrives when it's not hoarded but spread. And let's be real, shared prosperity is also about fulfillment. Because deep down, we all know that life isn't about what we take, it's about what we give. You can stack up wealth, build empires, and chase status, but if you don't use your prosperity to lift others, you'll feel empty. True joy comes when your prosperity touches lives beyond your own. When you see someone else succeed because of a door you opened. When you see someone else rise because you lit the way. That's when prosperity feels real. But sharing prosperity requires vision. It requires you to look beyond yourself, beyond your own comfort, beyond your own needs. It requires you to see the bigger picture, that when you help others rise, you rise too. When you invest in people, when you mentor, when you give back, you're not losing anything. You're creating more prosperity for yourself as well, because prosperity has a funny way of circling back. The more you give, the more you grow. The more you pour into others, the more life pours back into you. True prosperity is shared prosperity because it creates legacy. Your wealth, your success, your accomplishments, they're temporary. They'll fade. But the lives you touch, the opportunities you create, the communities you strengthen, those ripple far beyond your lifetime. That's the kind of prosperity that lasts. That's the kind of prosperity that transforms generations. Shared prosperity ensures that your life mattered, that your success meant something greater than yourself, that the world is better because you were here. And here's the ultimate truth. When everyone grows, the whole world benefits. Prosperity isn't a pie where one person's gain is another person's loss. Prosperity is abundance. Prosperity expands. Prosperity multiplies. The more people prosper, the stronger the world becomes. The more people prosper, the more opportunities are created. The more people prosper, the more peace and unity replace conflict and division. True prosperity is not about me. It's not about you, it's about us. Because prosperity is only real when it's shared